Okay, so good morning, everybody. Good to see everyone today. Um, Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving last week and staying warm in these winter temperatures. Our portion today is VaYetzei. We're on page 166, 166 in the Eitz Chaim. It is chapter 28 of Genesis, beginning with verse 10. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we left off last week with Isaac. That's that's Paul coming in as me, and he forgot to sign out because he was covering for me last week. And Paul, you came in as me. That is, you used my name to get into Zoom instead of your name to get to Zoom, and so it might mess something up with Zoom. So
Yeah, I'll log out. Sorry.
log out and log in as
Yeah,
yourself, please, just in case. And you won't miss anything. See, I
I
give,
thought I thought you had a split personality when I
yeah,
saw.
right. All of a sudden, I see my picture on the screen. So, I give Paul my login credentials for Zoom when he covers for me when I'm away, so that I don't have to give people a new Zoom link. It would be so confusing to do it
I
that.
knew exactly who it was as soon as
Yeah,
your picture came up.
right, right. So it'll just take him a moment to figure it out. And there he comes. Okay. 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 Thanks, Paul, for doing that. All right. So we're on 166 in the Eitz Chaim, Genesis 28, beginning with verse 10. Um, so last week's portion, um, Rebecca convinced Jacob to dress up as his twin brother in order to get the blessing from Isaac. And Esau finds out that Jacob got the best blessing. Esau gets a blessing, but it's not nearly as good, and says to himself, the Torah says, he says to himself that I'm going to kill him. And somehow Rebecca knows what Esau said, even though it says clearly he said to himself. So she tells Jacob, get out of town, go to my cousins, go to my brother and your cousins, and seek refuge there. Okay, so that's where we left off in the narrative. And this is where we pick up. I'm going to read from the beginning of the portion, but I really want to focus on something near the end of the first aliyah. Okay? VaYetzei Yaakov mi Be'er Shava vayelech Charana. So Jacob left Be'er Sheva and went to Haran. There's a lot of midrash about this. Why does it say where he left from instead of just saying where he was going to? And the midrash is about righteous people. Right, when righteous people leave a town, righteous people go to a town, and it affects the status of the town. Where the righteous person goes affects the status of the town that he's leaving from and that he's going to. Vayifga b'makom, vayalen sham kiva hashemesh, vayikach me'avnei hamakom, vayasem mera'ashotav, vayishkav b'makom ahu. So he came upon a place, doesn't say what place. The Midrash suggests that it's the Mount Moriah, because Mount Moriah we're told back in when Abraham was taking Isaac to the mountain that God would show him, the word makom, place, was used in that narrative too. So according to the Midrash, it's Mount Moriah that he got to. So which would make sense geographically on the route from Beersheba to Damascus. You'd be going that way. So he came upon the place. So again, Midrash says we're on VaYetzei, the beginning of the portion, verse 11, 166. He came upon the place and he bedded down for the night because the sun was setting. And he took from the stones of the place and he put it under his head. Okay, so it's very important to know what the Hebrew says, because the English is misleading. The English says, taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head. No, he took from the stones and he put it under his head. Now, it seems pretty clear that he's taking a stone to use as kind of something to rest on. And he went to sleep in that place. Okay, so the Midrash again points out here, he's taking the stones, and just a second. I just want to see if it's about this. Right, it is about this. Okay, so all the stones. So there are stones around him, and he takes one. So it's like the Midrash says all the stones were kind of arguing with each other. Which one of us stones is going to be the one designated by Jacob to have his head on us? So it's kind of like a little battle there, and somehow he chooses one stone from all the stones there to put his head on. Okay, so the rabbis in the Midrash kind of do lots of things in order to raise up the righteousness and the spirituality of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to the point that even stones they might be choosing to put their head on to sleep for the night becomes something of a kind of a holier kind of mission. And as if the stones could be talking to each other and vying to be the one to have the merit of having Jacob's head on him. 12, Vayachalom, Vehine Sulam Mutzav Arza, Verosho Magia Hashamayama, Vehine Malachei Elohim Olim Vyordim Bo. So he dreamt, and there was a ladder set in the ground, and its top reaching into the heavens or into the sky. And there were angels of God going up and coming down on it. Okay, now, there's interesting idea here too. If we think about it, angels are from above. So technically speaking, the Hebrew should say there were angels of God coming down and going up on it, because angels come from above and could go up, go back up. So the idea that it says that the angels are going up and coming down, what does that mean? So the rabbis suggest that Jacob has angels accompanying him on this journey, and the angels that have led him from Beersheba to this point, those are the angels that are going up, and then new angels are coming down to continue to guide Jacob on the rest of his journey. So taking the Hebrew very literally, angels going up, well, those are the angels that are done with Jacob at this point, and new angels are coming down to take over as he continues. Okay, so that's the going up and coming down. 13, Vehine Adonai nitzav alav, vayomar, Ani Adonai, Elohei Avraham Avicha, ve'Elohei Yitzchak, haaretz asher ata shochev aleha, lecha etnena ulezar echa. And there was God standing, it could either be translated standing beside him, over him, or on it. So here is God standing on it, over him, by him. Okay, so the alav, which can be on it or on him, could be referring to the ladder, like God. So the presentation of God here is that God is on top of the ladder, or maybe God is next to the ladder, next to Jacob. So it's unclear, the Hebrew is unclear. And God said, I am God, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land that you're lying on, so here, Aleha is on it, but the female it. Okay, remember, nouns in Hebrew are feminine or masculine. So the alav, the fourth word of verse 13, could be referring to the ladder. The ladder is a masculine word, or to Jacob. Jacob's a man. Eretz, even though it looks like it's a masculine word, is a feminine word. So that's why aleha, on it, is referring to the land, eretz being a feminine word. Okay, so that's your grammar lesson for today. I am God, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you are lying, I will give it to you and to your descendants. Okay, is Jacob awake? It doesn't say Jacob's awake, so this is part of the dream. So he has the dream of the ladder, angels going up and down, and God is standing there, either on the ladder, next to the ladder by him, and saying, reaffirming the covenant now, the third generation, covenant established with Abraham, reaffirmed with Isaac, and now reaffirmed with Jacob. The land is going to be given to your descendants. And 14, V'haya zar'acha ka'afar ha'aretz, ufaratzta yama v'kedma v'tzafona v'negba, v'nivrachu v'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama uvezarecha. So this is a promise, same promise that God gave to Abraham and to Isaac, that not just about the land being for you and your descendants, but 14, that your descendants will be as numerous as the dirt of the land or the dust of the earth, and you will spread out westward and eastward and northward and southward. Okay, it happens to be a song. We sing it sometimes when we're doing the hakafas on Simchat Torah. Ufaratzta yama v'kedma tzafona v'negba. So that's from this verse right here. You will spread out westward, eastward, northward, and southward, and all the families of the earth will be blessed by you and by your descendants. Okay, so this is the same blessing, slightly different words that God gave to Abraham, Isaac, and now giving to Jacob. The land's going to be yours. You're going to be you and your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. For Abraham, it was the sand of the sea. Same idea. You'll be as numerous, and also the stars of the sky. And people will be blessed. You will be a source of blessing. Yes, Saul.
Is there any significance to him saying that God said, your father Abraham and the God of Isaac, rather than saying your father Isaac?
Right. It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. Based on how long Abraham lived, he most likely saw the birth of Jacob, but the Torah doesn't tell us about any interaction between Abraham and Jacob. So it's most likely that he had an interaction, and sometimes the grandfather could have the role of the father in that kind of relationship. So it could be that it could be reflecting that. The commentary here doesn't even doesn't bother taking time to talk about it. Right, but it is something to note, and I don't have more to say about it than it's possible he had a closer relationship with Abraham than he did with his father. So, but we don't, and it's possible. Remember that Isaac preferred Esau over Jacob, so maybe that's reflected there too, right? Isaac preferred to Esau because he was a hunter. Rebekah preferred Jacob. That's the beginning of last week's portion described that. So maybe there's just leftover resentment there, and that's why Abraham was closer to him than his own father. Okay, 15. V'hinei anochi imach ushmarticha b'chol asher telech v'hashivoticha el ha'adama hazot ki lo e'ezavcha ad asher imasiti et asher dibarti lach. And I will be with you and will protect you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land because I will not forsake you. Or maybe ki is just an emphatic word here, not necessarily because, but verily I will not forsake you until I have done everything that I have said to you that I would do. Now, this verse, by the way, is in the prayer that I've been reciting for hostages in Gaza. That this is a promise that God is giving to Jacob, but it's a promise that is understood for all of Israel for all eternity, that God will not forsake us. God will return us to the land of Israel. So it's a verse used, this prayer that I use, that I've been reciting for the hostages, is written by the Rabbinical Assembly of Israel, and whoever wrote it on their behalf chose this verse, understanding it this is what we're supposed to understand too. Even though God clearly is speaking to Jacob here, it's God is speaking to us as Jews on December 4th, 2024. Right, so that as we're reading it today, God is speaking this to us today, affirming this promise as we are the descendants of Jacob, that is talked about here, that the descendants of Jacob will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. Well, there are 15 million of us Jews in the world today. That's numerous. It's not as numerous as it could have been if we weren't massacred over the generations, but the point is that this promise is not just a promise to Jacob alone; it's a promise to us today. So that God is still with us wherever we go, and will bring us back to the land of Israel. Okay, and that's something that we pray 3 times a day. Like in the morning service, as we have our talis and tefillin on, right before the Shema, God, bring us back from the 4 corners of the earth. We gather together the 4 tzitzit as we say this to kind of symbolically show our belief in this promise that we're going to be returned from all corners of the earth to the land of Israel. Okay, so this is the promise that Jacob gets. I mean, so he has this dream of the angels up and down a ladder, God speaking to him, affirming the promise that God had made to Abraham and Isaac. And then verse 16. So the difference, though, Abraham and Isaac were awake when they heard God speak to them and affirm this promise. Here, Jacob's asleep. Now, we know from the later in the Bible that God speaks to people in dreams. And it's understood to be like God spoke to Pharaoh in a dream, right? The dreams that Pharaoh has that Joseph interprets, those are important dreams. And the dreams that Joseph has are important dreams. So understood to be as serious and real as if God was speaking to the person live while awake. Okay, so speaking to someone in a dream. Now, we haven't seen it yet from anybody else having a dream and God speaking to them. So it's possible Jacob is unclear whether this is real or not. But we as the reader, don't think that this is unusual. And we think that this is real, how God is talking to Jacob here. Okay, so with that, 16, Vayikatz Yaakov Mishnato, Vayomer Achein Yesh Adonai Bamakom Hazeh, Va'anochi Lo Yadati. So Jacob woke up from his sleep and said, aha, there is God in this place, and I didn't know. So in other words, there was an anonymous place, verse 11, right? He came to the place and slept there overnight. So, and now he has this dream in this place, and he recognizes, well, this is just not some anonymous place that I laid my head down overnight. Clearly, this is a special place that God is here. So he recognizes something spiritual awesome has happened, and that this place is a special place, which gives further credence to the Midrash that this was already a sacred place, that this was Mount Moriah. Also, the Midrash suggests that the stone that Jacob laid his head on was the same stone that Abraham put Isaac on to set him up as a sacrifice, and also was the foundation stone for the creation of the world. I mentioned this idea, like the Dome of the Rock, the Muslim shrine that's on the top of the Temple Mount right now, that rock, what Muslims say Muhammad jumped off of to go into heaven, was this very stone. Okay, this foundation stone. Okay, so the stone he lay his head on, the place that he was in, God was here, Jacob says. 17, Vayira, so Vayomar, Mano Ra Hamakom Hazeh, Ein Ze Ki'im Beit Elohim, V'Zeh Sha'ar Hashamayim. So, Vayira. So he was in awe, or he was afraid. I'm going for the awe. The English says he was shaken. So I'm not sure. Shaken based on the afraid, I think, more than in awe. I don't think we shake in awe. We shake in fear. So, but I'm not sure that he's afraid. He's in awe. And he says, Mano Ra, how awful, but not terrible, but more of spiritual awe, full of awe, how full of awe this place is. This place is none other than the house of God, and it is the gateway to heaven. Every time I read it, I think, these are names of synagogues, by the way. Beth Elohim and Shar Shamayim are names of synagogues, and also they're in Beit El, Beth El, another name of the synagogue too. Not just, it sounds funny, but names of synagogues are based on the idea that God is there. Okay, so he recognizes God is there. He's in awe of that recognition that he has had this experience with God. He understood that this was like a portal. This place was a portal to God, understanding it from, modern technology web idea, going on to a portal there to the internet, or in science fiction, a portal to another universe. That's what that Sha'ar HaShamayim, the gateway to heaven, we could translate it as a portal to heaven. Okay, so now he awoke and said this. And then verse 18, Vayashkem Yaakov Baboker. Then Jacob got up in the morning, but he was already up. So there's a difference between waking up and getting up. Okay, so he's awake and says this in 16 and 17. And then 18, now he gets up in the morning. And so, in other words, maybe did he go back to sleep after being aware of what happened? So he had the dream at night. At what point at nighttime did he have this dream? Was it right away? Was it towards the end of the night? So is he up from this, and then he, in other words, he wakes up and he's in a daze, but he's aware enough that something awesome has happened. And then is he fully coming awake? Like, is he getting some water and splashing his face and then waking up? Or is he going back to sleep and then waking up a little bit later? So it's unclear. So, Vayikach et ha'even asher sam mera'ashotav vayasem ota matseva vayitzok shemen al rosha. Now, so Jacob gets up in the morning. He takes the stone which he had put his head on and makes of it a marker. So matseva. Matseva, this is the same word for a tombstone, and which serves the same purpose. So a tombstone is a marker in the cemetery. So we're not talking about what is common here in cemeteries here, those markers that are flat, flush on the ground. We're talking about tombstones, the traditional tombstones that you have in cemeteries, these upright stones that have information on it. Okay, so he takes this stone, and the stone might be in the form of what we understand as a tombstone today, but some other kind of stone like that. It's in Sephardic Jewish cemeteries, by the way. It's not just a tombstone. It's actually a long slab of some kind of granite or marble or limestone that goes the length of the grave itself. So in Sephardic areas of Jewish cemeteries, you have a whole piece of stone that's on top of the grave itself. It's only in Ashkenazi cemeteries that you have just the tombstone that would be at the head of the grave. Okay? Now, markers, by the way, in Jewish cemeteries today could either be at the feet or at the head of the grave. So it all depends on the cemetery itself. Okay, so then he takes the stone that he used as a pillow, he sets up as a matzeva, so a more serious kind of marker, it says here a pillar, but a pillar in a religious sense, that it's a holy, it's more than a monument. It's something designated as a holy site. Okay, so in other words, kind of like the Washington Monument would be considered a matzeva, but it's not holy. It's designated to in memory of President George Washington, but it's not a holy thing. I guess in the American civic tradition, it could be considered holy, but it's not. American civic tradition is not religion, but it could be analogous for a religious purpose. Okay, and he poured oil on top of it. Okay, so the pouring of the oil is, in Torah and in Bible, you anoint a king with oil, you anoint the high priest with oil, you anoint. So anointing is important as a part of a religious ritual, as affecting someone's status, changing one's status from not holy to then becoming holy. Okay, so he gets up. That's what he does when he wakes up. He makes that stone a holy marker. 19, Vayikra et Shem Hamakom Hahu Beit El Ve'ulam Luz Shem Ha'ir La Rishona. And he called the name of the place Beit El, and even though the name of the city originally was Luz. Okay, so the name of the place becomes Beit El. There is a town in the West Bank today, a Jewish settlement, Beit El. Is it on the place where this happened? It's unclear, but traditionally that is understood as the place. We don't know where these places were. The places in the land of Israel today, in the state of Israel and in the West Bank, are associated with these biblical places, but it's not all of them do we know 100% for sure were that place. Jerusalem we know for sure, but other places it's unclear. Okay, so it's clear that Jacob recognizes that something holy happened, something awesome happened. He had communication with God, and he designates the place as a holy place by doing the official ritual things necessary to make a place holy. Yes, Bob.
Well, I thought he was in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
So he says a city had been loose.
Exactly. And so then again, it also goes against the Midrash, because if the stone is the foundation stone for the temple in Jerusalem, then he's not in Jerusalem. He's in Beit El, which happens to be like 10 miles north of Jerusalem, something like that. So who knows where he is? Right. So, and it seems like you said, he's in the middle of nowhere. Then all of a sudden, it's Beit El or Luz. So it's unclear, the Hebrew, and it could reflect how the oral tradition, as it was told and retold over the centuries, and how it got written down into the Torah. So bits and pieces of different traditions come together into this written form here. So we really don't know for sure. Okay, so the end of the story is the next 3 sentences, and this is what I wanted to get to. Okay, so he's had this awesome spiritual experience. God affirms to Jacob that he's the next in line, and that the covenant is reestablished with him and his descendants. Okay, and he accepts that, he sees that he's had this religious experience. Now, verse 20, Vayidar Yaakov neder lemor, imihiyeh Elohim imadi, ushmarani baderech hazeh, asher anochi holech, venatan li lechem le'echol, uveged lilbosh. I have to read 21 because the sentence isn't over yet. V'shavti b'shalom el beit avi, v'haya Adonai li le'elohim. Okay, so these 2 sentences are one sentence, really. Jacob makes a vow, or he vows a vow, saying, if, so you have the if, and then you have the then. So 21 is the then, 20 is the if. If God will be with me and will protect me or guard me on this journey or on this path that I'm going on, and will give me another if God will, so a few ifs. If God will be with me, if God will protect me, if God will give me bread to eat and give me clothing to wear. Okay, so 4 ifs. There's 4 things that Jacob wants God to do with him, for him. Be my God. He's already had that promise. Protect me on this way. God says he's going to be with him. I'm not going to forsake you all the way till you come back to the land. That's what God says to him in 15. I'm with you, I'm protecting you, and I'm returning you to this land. So God, now he's in this vow. He's asking God to be his God, to protect him, and then he's also asking for bread to eat and clothing to wear. And another if, you bring me back in peace to the house of my father. So 5 ifs. If you do all of these 5 things, V'haya Adonai li Elohim, then you will be my God. Then God will be, then God will be my God. And 22, V'ha'even hazot asher samte matzeva yihiyeh beit Elohim. V'chol asher titen li aser a'asrenu lach. And this stone that I made into a matzeva, into this holy marker, will be a house of God. And everything you give me, I will tithe back to you. I will make a tithe back to you. So now this is the question I want to spend time on. Why is Jacob doing this? Nobody else, his father and his grandfather, didn't make some kind of conditional kind of statement like this to God. Like after experiencing God talking to them, they just do. And they go about their business of being transformed by having had God speak to them. Jacob is the only one so far that makes a condition. Like he's had this awesome experience. He makes a matzeva, and he calls the place Beit El, but now he's making a vow. Now, one way to understand this is, well, this could be a different tradition of how Jacob becomes the next in line. So maybe one tradition didn't have the dream part and didn't have the setting up the stone after the dream. And maybe the tradition only had the vow part. But in other words, then we have the vow oral tradition, and then we have the latter dream oral tradition, and both oral traditions were put together into this one story that we have now that then presents itself as a challenge. Because when you have both stories together, you have Jacob first admitting in the verses before that he's had this awesome experience. And now he's waking up from this experience and making a vow. I'll take advantage of this and see if God's willing to abide by this vow. Now, we don't have an answer. God doesn't have an answer for Jacob and his vow, saying, yes, I'll do as you say. There's no verse that says that. So we're left in this quandary. What is this vow, and why is Jacob making this vow? And I don't have an answer. And the below the line here, if we below the line on 168 on the right hand side, several commentators are troubled by Jacob saying, if God protects me, when God has just promised to do so in his dream. Like, in other words, they're troubled by him making this vow when God already has promised this to him. Also, how can Jacob say, the Lord shall be my God, only if God helps him prosper? Right? He has 5 conditions that he lays out. And then he says, if all these things happen, then God will be my God. So how could that be? The first comment may reflect Jacob's doubts about the validity of the dream. Maybe he didn't think the dream was real, but I don't think that's accurate, because he did think the dream was real by making a matzeva and pouring oil on it and declaring the place Beit El. Okay, so he knew the dream was real. That's what I suggest. So we go on in the commentary. Was it real or just wishful thinking? Can Jacob, like his grandfather Abraham, bottom 169, trust God to fulfill the divine promise? The Midrash resolves the second question by taking the words, the Lord shall be my God, as part of Jacob's prayer, not as a promise. Along with food and safety, Jacob is praying for a sense of God's presence. Okay, so maybe, according to the Sifrei, that's what it says in parentheses, the Sifrei is a collection of Midrash on the book of Deuteronomy, and it's Midrash for the sake of deriving Jewish law. As opposed to other Midrash, you have a reference to other Midrash. It says, for example, like on the bottom of 166 on the right side, it says Gen R 6812 in the commentary there. So Gen R is Genesis Rabbah, which is another collection of Midrash on the book of Genesis, and that's to teach homiletical lessons, things like that, not to teach Jewish law. So it's 2 types of Midrash that we have in Jewish tradition. Midrash interpreting Torah for the sake of deriving a homiletical lesson, like a value lesson, or to teach a story, like the 12 stones vying for each other, with each other, to be the one to be behind Jacob's head. So that's a Midrash for the sake of teaching a story and a lesson. Whereas the Midrash to teach Jewish law, that's interpreting the Torah to derive Jewish law. Like, how do we understand prayer? Prayer is not a spontaneous action. It's a matter of Jewish law. Praying 3 times a day is a matter of Jewish law. So it is from that legal section that dealing with prayer. So understanding this vow, not as a vow, but as a prayer, as an extra response. Not just did he set up this matzeva and anointed with oil, but he's also affirming, wow, I pray that these things can happen. That in other words, so we have to add a lot of things to this to make it more palatable. That perhaps Jacob is saying, maybe if I'm worthy of God appearing to me, then these things will happen, and I will then further affirm that God will be my God. So we have to play with the words a little bit if we want to give Jacob the benefit of the doubt that he's this is a continuation of the spiritual experience. But by a straightforward reading, we find that Jacob has this experience, and then later in the morning, he's questioning it, which could make sense because, we see that in the book of Exodus. The Israelites cross the sea and have just experienced the 10 plagues. They've witnessed the 10 plagues. They witnessed and lived through the experience of the miracle of crossing the sea, and then they almost the next moment they're wondering where water is going to come from to drink. So and then they have the Mount Sinai experience, and just 40 days later, Moses is delaying coming down, and they can't be patient anymore to wait for Moses, and they ask for Aaron to make a golden calf. So a lack of patience is something that we find in the Torah that becomes a character trait of the people of Israel. But you would imagine that at least the same day, the experience of this dream would carry over enough to provide Jacob with the faith and trust that he needs to move on. So I'm just saying, I just wanted to focus on this because of how unusual it is, this vow is, and how the rabbis have to bend over backwards to make Jacob out into still being a good person and worthy of being one of the patriarchs, and not just some regular guy who has no idea what's going on and has the chutzpah of making a vow with God. Right? A patriarch shouldn't have chutzpah. A patriarch should be accepting, like Abraham and Isaac before him. Any thoughts or comments about that?
Yeah,
Yes.
well, Jacob was a spoiled brat. His mother made him a spoiled brat.
Okay.
So he was saying, yeah, if you do this, if you do that, then maybe I'll do it.
All right, so that there could be some psychology there, some personality trait reflected in this vow, right? So that if Jacob was a homebody, that's what the Torah says after he was born. Esau was a hunter, and Jacob was a man of the tents, but meaning a homebody. So yes, he was probably spoiled by Rebekah, and yes, we could rightfully suggest that a spoiled brat, it's hard for a spoiled brat to overcome that spoiled nature and become a humble humble leader and express spiritual characteristics. So yeah, there could be some of that here. Barbara.
Well, Abraham also spoke with God, and with what if there's I could find righteous people.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
he was debating with God, so it's not.
Okay, but Abraham's debating with God about the righteous people. The rabbis understand, and just us as a regular reader understand that, yes, it's chutzpah to do that, but that was reflecting Abraham's care for other people and his compassion for the regular person in Sodom and Gomorrah. That and so that was seen as a good thing, and even as not just reading it through the lens of the rabbis, just by reading it straightforward, it seems like it's a good thing that Abraham is doing. Taking a vow like this, it just raises a question. Why does Jacob need to make this vow when God already promised? Now, God didn't say, I'm going to give you food and clothing, but God did say, I'm going to guard you and I'm going to return you to this land. So a couple of the points in the vow, God had already promised. So why is Jacob making this vow? That's the question about this, that it makes this different than what we've seen before. Okay, so there are other people later in the Bible who do things like this, but they're not of the category of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the rabbis make Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they make them better than all other characters in the Bible. Moses is equal to them, but other people, the prophets, not quite on the level of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So if they're on that level, then they have to earn being at that level, and they have to exhibit some kind of quality that shows that they deserve being on that level. Making a vow like this questions whether Jacob is on that level. But at the same time, we can say Jacob's a human being, and everybody responds to a spiritual experience of talking to God in a different way. And Abraham and Isaac take God on faith. Jacob doesn't take God on faith. He wants it in writing. He wants this vow. So, right? So,
Is it the real?
right. So, you make an agreement with a friend, and some friends will say, you know what? Just in case, let's put it in writing. So, all right, maybe based on the friendship, you might say, what does that mean? Why does my friend want me to put this down in writing? And others would say, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, better not to threaten our relationship in this way. Let's have it in writing. Everything's clear, and we can still be friends. But this is God. So it's not just Jacob with somebody else. It's not just Jacob with his brother. It's Jacob with God. So it's just, yeah. But.
Is it also saying that it's okay to be skeptical?
So, yeah, right. So, and I think that also is a question for us as religious people today. We don't have dreams like this, like Jacob had, where it's absolutely clear that God is speaking to us. Now, I can't speak for all of us on the screen and for people who are watching. You may have had such an experience like this. I'm not aware of it. You haven't told me. But I could speak for myself. I haven't had an experience that God has spoken to me. So then when you don't have an experience of God speaking to you, then it's that much harder to have faith and to make decisions in life that reflect trust in God. And so it makes more sense then to make this kind of vow, like, I'll be a good person if you do these things for me. But it's the reverse. If you do these things for me, then I'll be a good person. I'll believe in you. You'll be my God. So it makes sense for us today when we don't have 100% clear proof that God exists. But Jacob had proof that God existed. That's at least what the narrative, that's what the narrative points out. And even with that, there's the skepticism of having to make a vow like this. So it reflects the human condition that we are by nature skeptics. We have weaknesses. We're not 100% saintly, perfect people. Such a person doesn't exist, and we do the best we can. And I think then if we see Jacob as a regular human being, Abraham and Isaac as regular human beings, then they become more appropriate role models for us, because Abraham is a flawed character. He lies in Egypt about who his wife is. Isaac is a flawed character. He plays favorites with his children. Jacob is a flawed character. He lies. He follows his mother's lead in lying about who he is. And then we read in this portion about the further deception that he does and deception that's done to him. So there are flawed people who become leaders, great leaders of our people, and so that is the better lesson for a person in our day and age, that there's a lot of flaws in society, there's a lot of flaws with human beings, and we still have the potential to rise above them and to be better people and to make the world a better place. All right, we'll stop here for today. Have a good rest of the day, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.